Anybody on here? All right. I've got some crazy. This is the crazy COVID hair. Need a haircut. School me. Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is another awkward version of my live. We'll just sit here and be awkward. No. All right. So thanks for everybody getting on here. Appreciate it. I guess that's what I'm supposed to say. Anyway, it's kind of cool. Still weird me just talking to this thing and reading stuff. So whatever, I'm going with it. You look as lost as Joe Biden on camera. That's not very. It's not friendship. Okay. Whatever. Guess people are going to be mean. This is a mean episode. Not really. All right. Anyway, so I fielded a couple of questions whenever we that it came in, just kind of get everything going. And all right, here we go. One of the questions was, did we ever customize our gear? Some guys didn't do that much. I mean, I was one of those weirdos where I liked everything exactly where I wanted. The benefit that we had was that we had in our rigger shed. We had a bunch of sewing machines, and we had all the stuff that we needed to make some. I mean, some guys made their own gear early on, anyway. But then once it all came on board, it was better. But I always did some kind of a modification to my gear. I just always did. I was always fiddling with it and okay, what could be better where and all that stuff. So to answer that question is yes, customize my gear. And a lot of times I'll just use me, I did it to cut weight. Because you'd be surprised how much thread and nylon, extra moly weighs. Once I cut off all extra moly and stuff on a couple of gear with all the threads, it was almost 1.5 pounds. So ounces make pounds, and so really made a difference. So here's a question: was differences in CQB, say police, military? The ROE, in the operating environment, obviously is very much different. But I'll say, not that I've done it, but a gunfight in Baghdad is same as gunfight in Detroit, or same as a gunfight in Pickatown, USA. Gunfight defined as you're shooting at people and people are shooting at you. So not a one-way range, but a two-way range. And whenever that's going on, there's only a few principles that hold true with that. So I would say we didn't do it any different because there was different missions that I was on that required ROE, and not because they were some kind of a secret mission or some shit like that. It was hey, we're going to hit a propane tank facility. Okay, so yeah, that changes things, So my biggest thing with that is hey, just adapt into the situation, because we started doing call outs, we started doing hitting things hard, in a variation of everything in between. And I taught a lot of law enforcement from 2010, probably to about 3 years ago. And so I got exposure to a lot of things, super challenging, for sure. Utmost respect for what they're doing. But the thing is that certain things hold true. And when you cross that threshold, no matter whether you're pie or you're doing green clear, you're doing whatever you're doing on the outside of the threshold, hey, to each his own, do your own thing, do what works. But when you cross that threshold and you're making entry into the room, it's the same. And there's only a few things that work. And we'll get into that more. But in that same question, they asked me about hey, what if you're doing CQB and you run into orcs or rock trolls? That's some serious shit right there. So orcs is pretty much run armor piercing rounds, definitely AP all the way. And then if it's rock trolls, hey, just isolate with AT4s and like call in a 500 pounder on the building. That's what I would do. Anyway, that shit is funny. I like it, and I appreciate that question. All right, one thing. This is a good one too. We'll talk about one of the things that and now these are just always like I'm not really having a discussion. I'm not really like trying to debate or prove a point or sell anything. I've done a lot of CQB. Been trained by the best guys that I know of. That when I say CQB, not just in the house, but like all of my instructors or several of my instructors when I went through the course, were all in Somalia. So like that was pretty important. And so anyway, so the stuff that I'm just saying is what I've experienced and what I've seen people that I respect, and have done it for real numerous times. Not like, oh, there was that one time we got in that engagement. It's like, no, 100 firefights later, this is what works. So one of the things was like shooting opposite shoulders. And again, framing up the conversation with CQB is, number one, when it comes to shooting opposite shoulders, the first thing that I'll say is your marksmanship is good on your opposite shoulder as the other one. That's the first thing. If the answer is no, then don't change shoulders. If the answer is yes, which it doesn't take you, I was super surprised how easy it was for me to get strong on my opposite side. I was really surprised, kind of how easy it was. But I had to get the reps in it. I had to get comfortable. I had to understand how to change my sling around. Whatever it was, knowing my gear, knowing how to get into those positions and when to do it. I'll tell you, for me, again, I've done a lot of CQB. A lot of guys have done a lot. I've done a lot. I never change shoulders going through the house, ever. Because what I'm going to give up in that moment of time that it takes to switch shoulders and then settle in and then have to engage, my luck is that somebody's going to come around the corner like as soon as I decide to change shoulders. So if I had to, I would accept the risk of having more exposure than accept the risk of not being ready and not having my marksmanship spot on. That's just me. Do whatever you think is right, but that's just me on the shoulders, of course, and that's an 80% rule. Of course, there's be times where it's like it's completely obvious that I need to change shoulders, then I would change, to my other shoulder. So, yeah, if you need to switch shoulders, do it. But if you do switch shoulders, make sure that your marksmanship, that you can maintain that marksmanship from the opposite, or don't do it. That's my opinion. So that's opposite shoulders. So this is one that, and again, not a debate, but the Australian SAS, any stories working with them? One time, it was actually the last trip that I did before I gave up my team leader spot and began the retirement process. It was training in Australia. We did some climbing, we did some jumping, and we did a big training mission using boats, jumping in, all the different things on Rottnest Island. They had a bunch of civilians on it, so during the recce piece, you could get busted. So it was super good training. But yeah, have worked with the FBI, HRT a lot, the national team and the regional teams. Love working with those dudes. Okay, I must try to stay on track here. And then, so one thing I want to talk about is the high ready or the low ready, as whenever you're carrying a gun. So before we have this, like any conversation that we have, and this is a one-way conversation, so I'm just going to take it that you all agree with me because I can't read that fast. So cool, we're in agreement that we're going to frame up this stuff. And so when I'm talking about things, most people try to create solutions for problems that do not exist. It's amazing that people do that. You can make a bunch of money off of doing it, but it's kind of dumb. Unless you're trying to make money off stuff. Hey, right on then. So 80% rule. So everything that I'm going to talk about is the 80% rule, or that's the rule, right? Hey, 80% of the time, this is how stuff goes. And then if you got the rule, which is 80%, then 20% is exceptions to the rule. And what happens with tactics and techniques, a lot of times folks will spend so much time on that 20% that they don't nail down the 80%. They train all their focus and all this stuff on this exception to the rule. Man, when something's an exception to the rule, it's obvious to everyone why, because professionals are predictable, right? So we work together, you know what I'm going to do every single time. I know what you're going to do. When you do something weird, I'll be like, whoa. And then I'll look and see the situation and be like, oh, that's why you did that. It makes perfect sense. It's exceptions to the rules are obvious. So I'm going to talk about the high ready, low ready, right? So we need to, in this conversation, need to make that you're all agreeing with, because I don't see anybody talking back to me, and I can't read fast enough. So you're all in agreement with what I'm about to say. Is the first thing that matters when I'm carrying a gun is my vision. Can we agree that the most lethal weapon that I have is my ability to visually see things, because then I can take in that information and make decisions? Can we agree to that? Yes. Great. So that's the first thing. And why is our vision so important? Number one, because I got to make decisions. And then number two is the thing that takes the most amount of time and is the most critical is discrimination. Is it a shoot or is it a no shoot? Right? I mean, that's what I need all my time for. I don't need time to on my selector switch or getting on the trigger or I have to make that decision of, is it a shoot or a no shoot? Yes, that is the most critical thing I have to do. And my vision is the number one thing of importance for that. Can we all agree that that is it? Sweet. All right. I like this. Okay, so my vision is my vision gives me the ability to make decisions, and then gives me the ability to make the ultimate decision, which is a shoot or a no shoot. And so that's one thing. And then just talk about a little bit of points. So obviously, if my weapon is up here in front of me, I can't see what's on the other side of that without first moving it. Okay, that's half second it. Now I see it. That's another half second. Going off half second reaction times. And processing the information. That it all adds up, right? So I'm not going to do that. The math doesn't work for me. So that's just one, is my vision. Another thing that comes up where people will talk about high ready, low ready is retention, weapons retention. So the thing about it is, first I'll ask whoever's talking about this is, number one, have you ever had somebody grab your gun during the course of CQB? Yes, I have. I certainly have. And there's two kinds of people that grab my gun in my experience. One is what we'll call the hardest person in the world to deal with, and that is they're non-hostile and non-compliant, right? They're just freaked out. Like, you've just blown their doors off, or busted through the door. There's 3 to 4 grown-ass men in full kit, scary as hell, middle of the night, in front of you. People freak out and start grabbing stuff. I've had kids grab my barrels. I've had homeowners grab my barrels. I've had grab my barrel. But if you grab my barrel, that's cool. If you grab it, from a high ready, there's not anything that I can do with it. So number was going to say it number one. We'll just go one and then the other. So I can't do anything with my gun. If they were to grab my gun and grab my muzzle, because it's nice and up high, right? Because that's where it is. If someone grabs my muzzle, coming up from the low ready. You know what I mean? Then I've got legs, I've got pelvis, I've got stomach, I've got all of that. You know what I mean? Is right there on them as they're freaked out grabbing my barrel. I look at them freaked out grabbing my barrel because I can see what's going on. Then I say to myself, no. Then I make the decision, okay, is this a shoot or a non-shoot? I look at this person, I see them in the face, they're just freaked out. So they're a non-shoot, right? But they've got my gun now. And so, well, guess what? That's why I carry two. So you can grab my gun all day long. Please grab it. It's a vote. Everybody gets to vote. So you grab my gun, instantly I transition and I pull out a pistol. So now you've got my gun that's just kind of hanging there. And I've got my pistol out, and if you're just a non-hostile, non-compliant person, I take my hand and I move you out of the way as I continue to collapse my sector of fire and move to my point of domination with me, right? So I'm not like they're not taking me out of the fight. I have a job there, and that is to immediate threat, sector of fire, point of domination, fine work, right? So I've got shit to do other than deal with this non-compliant, non-hostile in front of me. So I get it done. I get my job done. I holster back up if need to, or you know what I mean, I address it along the way, save the team first, get my sector down. Now I'm dealing with this problem that's in front of me. The first one, like I said, is non-compliant, non-hostile. So it equals non-shoot. So then they're still hanging on to the end of my barrel that's now just hanging around me. I've cleared my sector of fire, holster my pistol, and go hands-on and deal with the situation, right? So let's say it is a hostile. You know what I mean? They've grabbed my barrel, and I have decided that yes, this person is hostile. Same drill for me, because I already got this pistol out. I engage that, which is now an immediate threat. I engage the immediate threat until it's no longer a threat, and then I collapse my sector of fire, move to my point of domination, and find work. Like that's one thing. The other option of if it is a hostile and I'm raising my barrel up and they grab my barrel, like I said, I've got legs, I've got pelvis, I've got however high up my muzzle is that I could begin to engage if necessary, if I choose to, as I'm continuing to move through. So I can engage. So that's a good thing. And that's from the standing upright, chest up, head up position. I can do that. If I need to, I can drop to a knee, you know what I mean? But I know my target, know what's behind it. So, fundamentals of safety come in, at all times. So just wanted to talk through that piece, which, to me is like, I just want to give everybody information of the why I'm saying what I'm saying, and then you can do whatever the hell you want to. Like, I don't care. You should do whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your team's capabilities and stuff. Now, if you were on my team or we were rolling together, you'd be doing what I'm talking about doing, and that's the truth. So, I took a little bit of notes on this because I get a little bit sideways. Okay, that covers all of that piece. So then we'll move back to the specific CQB, close quarters battle, SWAT operations, meaning like, hey, there's a group of dudes that's going to go through a threshold, right? Whatever you call it. So for the sake of this one-way conversation is we'll call it CQB. And so whenever we're doing CQB, right, there's a few simple rules before, and I'm not talking about pieing off. I'm not talking about like all that other stuff. Hey, do whatever you want to do. Do what's the right thing to do. I'm talking about what we've done, whatever we've done. We're sending robots, we're sending dogs, we've done all this kind of stuff, and now we're about to make entry, right? We're going into this room because we have to. So that's what I'm talking about. So I learned a lot, by teaching it to thousands of people, mainly law enforcement, and watching them move. Different levels of training from, national team dudes to all the way down to a local, emergency response, ERT, ESU, SWAT, whatever you want to call it. So minimal time training to maximum time training. Seen a lot of stuff that happens. So one of the number one rules of going through that threshold is tight to the man in front of you. Right. Tight to the man in front of you. So whether I'm at a high ready or a low ready, one of the things about a low ready, a lot of the times the weapon's in my pocket or my shoulder. I don't have to reset it. But hey, you can get just as fast doing it. Like, one's not faster than the other. Whatever technique you use, if you work it, you're going to get your times to beat the high ready guy or beat the low ready guy. It's only as fast as you can do it, whatever. But it was, so back to CQB, tight to the threshold, right? So even when you're tight to the threshold, the weapon's out of the pocket. When I say tight to the man in front of me, I mean like literally I'm touching them, right? My gun is on a spring. It's like if it's supposed to be here, it's now all the way down, pointed in between my feet, and it's out of the pocket of my shoulder. But you know what that gives me the ability to do is to see everything. Unless I'm number one man, of course my weapon's out and I'm looking and I've got one. So from 2 on back. So a couple things happen. Number one, you have to be tight to the threshold because the technique demands it. Because if there's a gap, your buddy's going to get shot in the back while you comfortably come in, right? So you got to be uncomfortably close. So whenever they step out of the way, you can go right to where you need to go. So with that being the case, if from the low ready, I can get super close. I can be right up on them. I can do that with the high ready too. I'm not saying that. Super close to them, and when they're out of the way, my gun can immediately come up. Right? Same thing from the high ready. Hey, I can have my gun pointed up, tied to the man in front of me, and comes down. So let's talk about flagging, right? In this conversation, because it'll get to whatever decision you decide to do. Is flagging. Number one, you should never be comfortable with getting flagged in any kind of way, in any kind of situation. Like you flagging, I should have the same emotional response of you flagging my lower extremities as you do putting a gun in my face, right? Because if this is my profession, this is what I do for a living, you have an AD, blows out my knee, now I'm having surgeries and I'm not doing what I love doing, right? So we shouldn't flag, right? That is it, right? Firearm safety. Don't let anything past my muzzle that I'm not willing to kill or destroy, right? Same kind of thing. Number one, that's how we train. That's what we do. With that, in CQB, at nighttime, in a real environment, just working second shift, you're tired, and now a gunfight erupts. Shit's going to be moving really fast, and I'm here to tell you, with the number one rule of keeping the safety on and not flagging anybody, it happens. It happens at times, and anybody that does it, that has done it numerous times in a gunfight situation, tells me that it never happens. I'll call them a liar, right? Because it happens. Because shit's going fast, and so let's have an agreement here that we know, experienced guys know that hey, it happens, right? So if we can agree to that, that hey, occasionally it happens, then let's look at that, analyze it for a second. So if we're agreeing that hey, occasionally you flag the guy in front of you. It happens sometimes, right? So let me ask you this. From a high ready, where are you going to flag? The head, right? That's the only thing I can flag. Right? So the problem with that is that it's my head, and you can't like put a tourniquet on my neck to stop my head from bleeding. So if you're coming from a low ready, worst case scenario, I flag, AD occurs, hey, I hit you somewhere in your lower extremities. Horrible, bad, not good, none of it's good, but I can put a tourniquet on that. So that's one thing. And then, so how you keep that from happening is being tight to the man in front of you, right? If I'm tight to in front of you, my weapon cannot flag you if I'm nice and tight. If I start creating a little bit of space, my gun starts coming up, I get a little more comfortable position, that forms a 45-degree angle. Now when you cut to your left and I cut to the right, I'm flagging your lower extremities if there's a gap. So if I'm doing everything right, there's no way that I'm going to do that. So those are just some of the points that I wanted to bring up about high ready and low ready. It's really like, if you do the math on it, it really doesn't make a sense. Is there times whenever, again, 80% rule, doing that 80% of the time, that's the rule. 80% of the time, we're doing that 100% of the time. That's always funny. And then 20% of the time, you know what I mean, if I did something different, or went, in my case, you know, the rule is low ready. If all of a sudden someone sees me in high ready, there'll be a damn good reason for it, whether it's high security, you know what I mean, going up a hallway, going up a stairwell, you know, something that requires it. And again, there may come a situation, you know, whenever it's real life, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens, you know, and for me, like, notice I didn't mention anything about, like, dudes being on the catwalk, or, you know, shoot houses, and, yeah, none of, even though that is true, if someone's on the catwalk, you know what I mean, hey, that's a negative kind of thing. That wasn't in this discussion that we had. So that's the deal, as far as the reasons why the low ready. And one of the things is that comes up is like, oh, it's faster doing it one way or the other. It's like, hey man, you're gonna get fast on whatever you train on, whatever that is, you know. So that is why I used the low ready. And again, nothing I came up with. It was you know, it was bought. That technique was bought and paid for in blood by many others, and that was handed down to me by people that, you know, like I said, small A guys. That's pretty important to me. And then my own personal experiences. So that's kind of the main things that I wanted to talk about. I don't know what any of this stuff. You fight like you train, absolutely. Looking at a little bit of these things. Hey, Valdosta, Georgia. No interactions with Greek Special Forces. Yeah, that was a question somebody said, like foreign units. So I worked with a lot of different foreign entities. Pre 9/11, I was in 7th Group, so pick a country in South America. Not all of them, but worked with a lot of them. A lot of really good. That was FID when we were doing that then. So I worked with a lot. If I had to pick people to fight with, like who I want to fight with, is the Kurds, Kurdish people. Spent a lot of time up north. Got a lot of really good friends. Born and raised there. Some of them left for a bit, come back. They're doing what they're doing now. But they're the closest thing that I've ever experienced to an American. American defied, like American freedom fighter, steely-eyed killer, barrel-chested freedom fighters. And they got the same kind of attitude. Like they're kind of generally pissed off. Um, they're super aggressive. They're really good at problem solving. They got the same kind of mentality. You know, closest thing I've ever experienced to U.S. Special Forces, in my experience, I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there, but in my experience, if I had to pick a group of folks that were not U.S., and it's like, hey, you're gonna go and fight with them. When I say not U.S., meaning like, meaning not like 2-2 SAS, not like the Aussies, not like our equivalent kind of partners, not our partner forces, but our foreign partner forces. You know, it would be Kurds. Is operator, overused term. Man, that is a great. I got a lot to say about that, but I'm going to just kind of take it easy right now. So, I don't know, like when you go to medical school, like when you graduate, they call you a doctor, right? So whatever cool school that you go to, like you get what you got. Like if I go to Ranger school, then I'm like Ranger qualified. If I went to dive school, I get like dive qualified. If I go to the operator trainer course, then I'm an operator. I don't know. It makes sense. You know, I mean, I get guys, you know, I mean, all kinds of people jump on all kinds of people about like, oh, you weren't there in this unit or that unit, or hey, you don't. But hey, everybody's operators now. Everybody got to be special, man. I don't know. But there's a lot that I could say about that. But hey, man, it's America. You can say and do whatever you want. I'm just saying, if you go to a course and it gives you the qualification, then that's what you are. If you don't go to a course and you're claiming a qualification, then you're still not. So I'm just saying. I'm talking about U.S. Army folks only. So only within my experience. Not talking about cops. Not talking about anybody else other than U.S. Army folks. That's what I got to say about that. I mean, I go to airborne school. I'm a paratrooper. I mean, there's some logic like to all this thing. It's like, hey, I do something, I'm called that. I do something, I'm called that. Like if you were to call me a Navy SEAL, I'd be like, whoa, 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 no, I'm not. Like, I'm not in the Navy. I didn't go to BUD/S. I didn't go to any of that. It's like, well, I'm just saying, man. But I'm just saying. Yeah, whatever, man. So I'm gonna look for a couple more. Otherwise, I'm just kind of rambling. I was in a dark place, getting out of the military. Thank you for Warrior's Heart. Yeah, man. Appreciate that comment. Yeah, so do a little bit of. Somebody else had asked something about Warrior's Heart too. You know, just real brief on Warrior's Heart. You know, we'll do a whole nother thing on it, but it's you know, I mean, that's where my heart is. That's what I love doing, man. Super passionate, you know, health and welfare of the troops. I'm NCO. Give them the ability to thrive and survive in combat. Right? We did that overseas. Now we do it in the war at home. Glad you got out of dark place, bro. And now go and get somebody and bring them with you. You know, that's one thing that I do want to talk about is, well, I'm all over the place, but with Warrior's Heart, you know, we're an essential service. From the time COVID started until now and continuing on in the near future. There's a lot of programs, PTSD, TBI, substance abuse. There's a lot of programs that when COVID hit, they shut them down. And that pissed me off a lot because, you know, guys and gals don't go to these programs so they can feel better. Like, oh, I'm having a bad day. Like, oh, I'm just kind of crazy. It's like they're freaking dark and dying, right? So all of a sudden something happens and we're just going to shut the doors and like, oh, you can't get it. We got to mitigate risk and take all these other precautions. and it makes things more difficult. But hey, we're a solution-based organization. Like, hey, fix it. Like, this is America. Like, we fix our own problems, and so we've been open and running the whole time. Again, we have tons of risk mitigation, tons of stuff that we have to do to keep everybody healthy and safe during all this place. Healthy and secure. I don't like that safe word. But yeah, man, I love it. I love doing it. One thing that I will put out, just kind of as a parting little thing, or maybe not. Yeah, I know Kevin. Is like, hey, I want to talk just real quick about, again, using me is in reaching out for help, right? How many times you heard guys say, I've said it, right? Before I knew this information I'm about to give you, I just said it, right? I'd always say to my guys or whoever, like, hey, bro, if you need anything, let me know. If you need help, reach out, let me know. So let's analyze that for a second. It's like, so I've been to a bunch of selections. So let's say I'm talking to one of my equivalent guys. Those selection processes, whether it was SF, whether it was unit, they guarantee a couple of things. They guarantee a bunch of things. Creates a profile. If you pass this selection, you equal this kind of profile. There's a whole bunch of things, but there's two main things, right? By me passing those selections, it guaranteed two things for sure. Number one is that I'll never quit. That's why I passed selection, right? Number two is I'm never going to ask for help, right? So I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to ask for help. And then you tell me, like, hey, bro, if you need something, let me know. Like, it's not happening, right? So my verbiage, the narrative that I have with guys, with folks that I'm concerned about, I don't say that to them. If I know they're in a not great place, I reach out to them and be like, hey, bro, how's it going? Of course, they say, oh, yeah, man, everything's going good. And it's like, okay, well, tell me what's good. What's good going on in your life? Everything's good? And if there's something good going on, they'll say, oh, yeah, my son, he just graduated such and such and blah, blah, blah. But then sometimes you say, okay, yeah, everything's good. Tell me what's good. And then there'll be a silence like, it's like, okay, so it's not good. So what's going on? Anyway, my point is that reach out to your brothers and sisters. Check on them. Get on them. Another example of that is like, hey, on the battlefield, we've got self-aid, buddy aid, medic, hospital, evac, all that, right? So I get wounded, self-aid, right? Because the mission's got to continue. Do self-aid. Let's say I can't do self-aid. Hey, then I get my buddy, right? My buddy helps me out. And then now let's say I'm unconscious. If I'm unconscious, right? The hit goes down. Team leaders, everybody gets back together. Hey, yeah, target clear, secure. We're missing Tom. It's like, oh, wow, that's unfortunate. Well, let's just keep going. Like, that never happened, right? It's like, hey, we're missing Tom. It's like, well, what the fuck? Like, stop everything that you're doing right now and go find him. That's the mission, right? So, now, in the war at home, you got a lot of folks that are unconscious out there, right? They can't ask for help. They can't. For whatever reason, they can't, right? So it's up to us to go find them and treat them with whatever it is that they need. And so anyway, kind of got on the pulpit there for a little bit, preaching, but I'll stop doing that now. So, Greg's out of jail. Cool. I know who Greg is. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Friday, Tactical Talks with Tom. I just made that up. But anyway, appreciate everybody, all you guys and gals, whoever got on. I appreciate you getting on. It's a big deal, for you to take your time to get on here and listen to me run my mouth. I appreciate it, and hopefully it was worthwhile to you. And much love to you, my man. Courses of action. And I'm not going to get off of here if I just keep reading. Awesome. Thanks. So thanks, everybody. And let's take care of our own. And we got a lot of work to do. Let's get after it. Y'all have a good weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Keep it rolling.